You're listening to The Watchers, a show where two women from opposite ends of New Jersey watch movies and TV about the world's best TV dad, TV's greatest dad, maybe?
I was going to say a show about girl dads. Because we watch a lot of shows with like spunky teen girls and like girl dads.
Yeah, but I think Keith is I feel like most of the dads on the shows we watch don't know what to do about their daughters. Keith is not being weird about the fact that his daughter suddenly has boobs. You know what I mean?
Oh, God,
Keith is perfect and does everything right, even when he's doing things wrong. I love him. I can't look at Keith Mars without crying. I love him as if he were my own father.
This was the one thing I knew about your relationship to the show was your obsession with the dad. And I don't
obsessed. It's a healthy love for the world's best dad.
Okay. Yeah. I'm Jodie.
I'm Andrea.
And we watched Veronica Mars.
We did watch Veronica Mars.
Yeah.
A show you have watched sort of in bits and pieces a little bit. Many years ago,
episodes out of order randomly while working in grad school. So
that's funny because it is both, and obviously as you've learned from the pilot, has a big mystery, season 1 mystery that gets set up here, but then also each week there's also a little mystery to be solved. So I imagine that was probably both confusing, or I guess if you just could ignore the greater mystery, you could just...
And I wouldn't say I was watching closely. Like, we were theoretically checking in and out AV equipment and stuff. And, like, the people that I worked with, this was their comfort show, and they would just put it on because this was 2010, so this was after the show had been on. But, yeah, it was just, like, a thing that was on in the background that was, like... seemed entertaining, and when I actually sat down and watched it, it was like, yeah, this is fun, but it was like what was just on in the background.
That makes sense.
I definitely never seen the pilot. I just saw random later episodes that were sort of those like a Monster of the Week kind of ones.
Right. Well, and it's funny because every episode is at least 2 mysteries going, and you do have to kind of be paying attention. I can't imagine like checking into the pilot and seeing like Veronica hand Wallace a tape and understand why that's a big deal, or what she's even doing in the courtroom, or real quick, September 22nd 2004, season 3 ended May 22nd 2007. It was 7 years later. There was a film in 2014 that was fan funded. And then in 2019, it did get a season 4. It's a time jump. It's only 8 episodes. So there's like 64 episodes in the first 3 seasons. And then this little 8 episode miniseries.
I did know about that. I remember when there was like the Kickstarter for the movie. Mm-hmm. That was sort of a thing for a while there. Yeah. There was the Zach Braff did that for one of his films after Garden State.
What else? Created by Rob Thomas, who's worked on a million things, notably for our purposes or our conversation season. He was one of the writers for season 1 of Dawson's Creek. Mm-hmm. He was
the musician Rob Thomas, which is a thing that I honestly was kind of unsure about until now.
Like, you wouldn't have been totally shocked.
If you were, I could have believed it.
Guess what? What else? Not just Matchbox 20.
Yeah. Well, doesn't like Rob Zombie? Isn't he involved in film?
Yeah, he's made movies.
Yeah. So like, it's possible to do both.
Yeah, you're right. There's a fun little Rob Thomas joke in a later episode where they play on that a little bit. This Rob Thomas was a young adult novelist first. Veronica Mars was intended to be a novel first before he turned it into a script. I think that's everything you need to know.
Yeah. I found some interesting cast things. Although actually a little bit of background that I found that I thought was interesting, talking about the like young adult novel part of it. Basically, the original protagonist was male, which I thought was interesting. And then he originally was going to take the script to like more adult's the wrong word, but like prestigious places like FX, HBO, or Showtime. But UPN ended up like not adjusting the darkness of the show too much. They had to make it a little bit lighter for their audience. But
it's still pretty dark for a teen.
Well, yeah, the next sentence in that article was there was also a lengthy debate as to whether Veronica could be a rape victim, which is a thing that happens in the pilot where you're like, oh, okay. But yeah, it also it's compared to some of the other shows we've talked about. There was a review in Variety that called it the smartest teen-oriented drama since Freaks and Geeks, which we just talked about. It's Veronica Mars has been compared to Buffy in some ways because she's like the clever, hyper competent, smart,
I think
blonde.
She's my favorite protagonist out of all the teen shows we've watched. I will often say, and I feel this way about Buffy too, people can hate me for it, the like main protagonist is always the character I'm least interested in, and this is really the only show of the ones we've covered where that's not the case. I love Veronica so much.
Yeah, well, there's this AV Club article that compares them and says like, while they're superficially similar, clever not preppy, strong but not masculine, hiding pain behind quips, this author said, even still, I found more to identify with in Veronica Mars early on. Buffy was never passive until much later in the show's run. She saw a problem, she fought it and won. Veronica Mars has been passive and underprivileged. She's been hurt and seen her family torn apart. She knows she can't always win. Buffy quips because she doesn't believe what's happening to her. Veronica quips because she does believe it. So like that's sort of, and I'm not you know this, I'm not a Buffy person either, but I can see that as why you would relate to her and enjoy her more.
Yeah, she's so smart. She's so funny. She's such an asshole. Like,
we love a bitchy teen.
She's funny. So how do we want to, I guess because of the mystery of it, we should kind of just work through the pilot. Right? Sure.
Well, the pilot, I found a plot breakdown of the pilot, and it is doing a lot.
Important to think of it, obviously. I'm not saying anything groundbreaking here. Everybody knows this even if you haven't watched the show, but it is teen noir. She's a hard-boiled detective. She's just in high school. And so it necessitates doing a lot because you need to be kind of, what's the word? It's not supposed to be super straightforward.
It talks about how it's a little bit more woven together, the different plots. Like many scenes are working on multiple plot lines at the same time, which I thought was interesting.
That's something the show is really good at in general. Everything is kind of informing everything else. And it is a real, it's one of those things where you will revisit a flashback or learn about something from someone else's perspective, or another layer will be added, or you'll think there'll be a mystery that you think will be solved. And then you'll find out not that what you learned was untrue necessarily, but that it was wrapped inside something else even more complex.
Right. Should we talk a little bit about the cast first, or should we just do that as we go?
What do you think?
Let's just quickly go through it. So obviously Kristen Bell as I almost said as Buffy, as Veronica Mars. She was 24 when the series aired. I read an article where Rob Thomas said that originally he was really insistent that teenagers played teenagers, and then he, I think, realized that that's not as easy as it sounds.
Right. And she's so good, so it's fine.
Yeah. And Enrico Colantoni, I knew from Just Shoot Me, which was like, I think a David Spade sitcom or something.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you watch that?
In the way that I watched literally anything that was on my TV as a child. But I was pretty young, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, people, that's like one of those shows people have a real soft spot for, I think.
I don't. I watched it because it was on TV. It was one of those things.
Yeah.
But I like him even more now because I found out that he is really involved in like charity stuff, and he seems like a really good guy.
Aww.
He's been involved in the Companion Animal Protection Society's campaign to boycott commercial pet stores. He was involved with a memorial trust that assists first responders and other service personnel with PTSD. He's like a good guy.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys who you can probably guess as a good guy because he is never not acting.
I was not surprised.
You just like, there are these people who it's like, oh, they just, everybody hires them for everything all the time. Like,
yeah. But do you know what Teddy Dunn, who played Duncan, is doing now?
No. Uh-oh.
No, it's just so fucking random. He went to law school and he's now the assistant USDA at the DC U.S. State's Attorney's Office.
Wait, really?
Yes, really.
I had no idea.
He went to law school in the 20-teens and he is now an assistant DA at the DC U.S. Attorney's Office.
Hilarious. That is so funny. That is so random. I love that.
It's so random. And the guy that plays Logan, Jason Dohring.
Jason Dohring.
Yeah. What do you know about him?
What do I know about Jason Dohring? I mean, he stayed acting, right?
I think so. He's a Scientologist. He's a child. Yeah. He's a child of two Scientologists.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. His dad was a millionaire who made his money in ed tech. So like Age of Learning. But he was also, the fun facts were like the best part of me looking at the cast. He was the first CEO of Neopets. Do you remember Neopets?
Dohring was, or his dad?
No, his dad.
Okay. Yeah, do I remember Neopets? Jodie.
He like bought the Neopets site from the people who founded it and like turned it into a big thing.
Very funny. That is so weird.
Isn't that random?
Yeah, that's what a weird. So this cast just got a lot of weirdness to it. Okay.
Yeah. And then, Percy Daggs III, who played Wallace. He's not a Scientologist. He didn't start a company. He's not a lawyer, but he was Mathlete number 2 in a Freaks and Geeks episode that we didn't get to. Yeah.
That's great. I love that for him. That makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is also in iZombie. Everybody gets a run at that show. It's another Rob Thomas.
Yeah. Which I've never seen.
I watched the first couple episodes and I don't remember if I liked it or not, but I didn't keep watching it. But I think it's a show that people who watch it generally like.
Okay.
But,
Amanda Seyfried, I can never know how to pronounce her name. She plays the dead girl, Lily Kane. That's really all I had. I thought it was so funny when I was doing my usual like run through of the cast, like, oh, this person's been in these shows. Oh, I think I saw them there, blah, blah, blah. Oh, this person is an assistant U.S. district attorney.
Obviously.
This one's a Scientologist. Like, his dad founded Neopets. I was like, what is happening? That's all I got for the cast. I was just like, I don't know, made me laugh. The randomness of it. I also found one small Jersey connection in my cast research just now.
What's that?
So our assistant DA friend was at one point a law clerk to Federal District Judge William J. Martini of New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because he was practicing law in New York from 2018 to 2020.
I mean, I'll take it because the best one I had is that Keith says Springsteen at one point.
Yes.
And also that Neptune is a city in New Jersey, not a city in California.
That is correct.
It's based SoCal. It's like vaguely based on Orange County.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It feels very Orange County.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I think last week you said something about pretending we were in New Jersey and I was like, you're not going to be able to do
I
it.
can't.
It's not going to happen here.
No, definitely not. So yeah, we start off with something that I found a little bit disturbing. Wallace taped to the flagpole.
Yeah, so Wallace is taped to a flagpole. We're not totally sure why yet, right? It looks pretty uncomfortable. The thing that kind of gets me about this show is how serious it is about some things. But then like Weevil is the head of a motorcycle gang and doesn't just like beat Wallace to death. He tapes him to a flagpole. Yeah.
Like, and then like really kind of beats up Logan later on and will continue to, and except Veronica's like, Yeah, it's good. You're done.
Yeah, it's like that kind of stuff. It's a show that is so will be so realistic and kind of like gritty in ways that teen dramas usually aren't, but then also Weevil just pulls a little prank on Wallace for involving the police of all things. Like one of the biggest.
Yeah, it does mix. Yeah, it mixes like very serious things, like someone got murdered, with like you never know what footing you're on, whether like something really terrible is going to happen or you feel like something terrible should happen, but it magically doesn't.
Yeah. And I think, though, like what you can't get away with it without a lead like Veronica Mars, who kind of is so dry and so like,
yeah, like she has a whole like, isn't this nuts kind of feeling the whole time. Like, this is my life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's one of those things that I'm always like, well, we just kind of let it, like, it's a fictional town. And I think that also helps that we're like sort of it feels a layer removed from reality to me.
Well, part of that I think is the camera work too. Like I noticed immediately that this is shot pretty differently than the stuff we've watched recently. Like there's a lot more use of like a wide angle lens or like a spinning camera effect, like, or like the flashbacks are shot not just in like a typical dreamy color palette, but like a really extreme like blues and haziness. And it has more like for me, I noticed the camera much more in this. And it feels like it's like trying to be like, what's crazy here? Oh my God, this is weird.
It also makes sense too that it's a show that relies so much on like in scene cameras and photography, and Veronica's always looking through a camera and they're always reviewing pictures together. Well, girl's got to have her hobbies.
Yeah, I've got thoughts on that.
Are we saving those for the end?
We're saving that for when we get to the point where she is scanning and printing out her photographs.
Okay.
In 2004. Yeah, I mean, even the initial shot of Wallace taped to the flagpole is like this top-down sort of really dramatic angle, very wide angle also. It's very stretched out. So that's sort of indicating this like surrealist vibe.
Totally. And also like it is a genre show in a way. None of the shows we've watched have been at this point, right? At least the teen ones, they're all none of them are anything more, not anything more than, that sounds dismissive, but they're all just kind of like teen soaps. Like that's the genre as opposed to
like
this. Yeah. And so that lets it, I think that lets it be a little more stylized too.
Totally.
Is my feeling.
Yeah. I mean, like when they go into his office, I was like, classic detective agency.
Great. It's really
sign
good.
On the door, the light coming through the windows, the like, yeah, all of it.
It feels like 1990 in his office, despite it being 2004. Like it's great.
Yeah. Although 2004, man, oof. There's just her hair. It's so bad in this episode.
The hair is like, it's like Natalie Imbruglia. It's like very...
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a scene where she's wearing plaid pants, a choker, like she has very skinny-ish eyebrows, and like a shirt hoodie thing. I was just like, this is the most just... Yeah, Natalie Imbruglia is a good...
The fashion in the show is kind of wild. In a way I really love, like...
her hair, it's so painful because she's so pretty, and I'm just like, please, God, get past this. Like, when they show her in that bad wig in the flashback, I'm like, at least she looks like a human.
It's that
and not like
rough,
someone electrocuted. But she looks like someone electrocuted her. Like, the hair weird, is so bad. Anyway, I don't know that it gets not the point.
Much better throughout. Veronica has some haircuts. Like,
yeah, but I think this is a particularly egregious example. It's particularly 2004.
Oh, so we've talked about one scene so far, technically. Wallace gets cut down from the flagpole, and then we get if we're going to compare her to any of our characters so far, any of our teen protagonists so far, I think Angela Chase is probably the closest one.
The voiceover is the thing that connects the two of them for me. But again, it's like listening to a voiceover from an immature preteen versus like a hard-boiled, like too old for her age.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that we talked about the scene where she gets called on in class. And I said, like, normally she would know the material and she'd have something really smart to say, but she's a real teen girl. So she just says, like, Anne Frank was lucky.
Yeah.
Veronica,
but instead here she has asleep.
She's asleep, but she has Pope memorized. But then also has a quip where she's like, life's a bitch and then you die, I think is where it's like you kind of get everything about Veronica at that point, just in that little scene.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that personality-wise, she couldn't be further from Angela Chase, but that voiceover and the reliance on it, that like internal perspective. Yeah, I do see that.
Well, I was looking at the script for this, and it is quite different. There's an opening scene. I
have it up, yeah.
Yeah, there's an opening scene where she talks about never getting married that I'm kind of glad isn't how they open it, because who gives a shit about that? I like that we immediately get the class divide discussion there instead. And then even what's happening in the classroom.
Yeah, it's different.
Totally different.
Yeah, I know. I found the same thing. I found like it's like his second draft of the script. There's so many differences. There's a whole scene later on that's not in it. That's like, yeah. And in the original script sheet, it's like about Aristotle and Plato, and same thing though, same idea. She just shows how smart she is, and you know.
But it makes her, I think it's more like I would be more annoyed by her there, because she's like proving how smart she is by knowing stuff and describing it, as opposed to just like firing off some thing she memorized. I don't know why. I'd be more like, shut the hell up.
That's fair. And then there were a lot of small differences, but yeah. So then we get the lunchtime?
No, the locker search, right? Isn't that next? Which is one of my favorite scenes in all of TV. It's such a perfect, they do such a good job of like introducing her character in this pilot. I think that locker searches are random for everyone but her, because she's got a hookup at the police department. That she knows the dog barks at her and she's like, Buster, and he immediately calms down. That she could have just taken out anything that might have gotten her in trouble and been left alone, but instead she's got to be a smart ass about it, and she totally empties out her locker, and the only thing in there is the picture of the principal in the shape of a heart. That's so funny. It's so unnecessary.
Yeah, it is. It's very like, oh, she's a wise ass. Okay. Yeah, in the script that I read, her locker is just empty. I think they added that picture later on, which is a really lovely touch.
I love it so much. She's such an asshole.
She is. Yeah, then we go to lunchtime and she's sitting by herself and like looking at the table of the popular kids that she used to be a part of and is no longer. Yeah.
Which is another take we sort of haven't seen before. We see plenty of social strata like exploration in all of these teen shows. But this is, I think, the only one we have where there's like a fall, where she was part of the cool kids and now she's dealing with how her whole life has fallen apart.
Yeah, which in a lot of shows would be something stupid, like she stole someone's boyfriend or you know, pissed off the wrong popular girl or did something socially uncouth. But instead, like, her best friend is murdered.
Yeah.
And her dad goes after her boyfriend's family. Like, it's the same thing. It's the tone is so up and down and like in between. But yeah, we find out that Duncan was her boyfriend, and it's like there's a bunch of flashbacks involved.
We also find out in the lunch. We get a lot in the lunch scene.
Yeah.
That Wallace, the reason the gang is after him is because he pulled the alarm when they were robbing his store.
Which, to be fair, is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. And then he chickened out, though.
Yeah.
When fucking Lamb shows up.
Well, there were 15 bikers.
Yeah, I would have chickened out too. I wouldn't have pulled the alarm though, because I'm not a snitch, but fine. Whatever, Wallace. But again, the fact that their response is just a time to a flagpole is crazy.
Yeah. It's like it is a little bit trying to have it both ways, where it's like, this is very scary, but also they're still in high school. And so we're gonna resolve this in a very like Revenge of the Nerds high school way.
Yeah, it is a little, I mean, when I talk about it, it's uneven, but watching it, I never really question it in the moment. Like it feels consistent inside this show.
I think a lot of that has to do with her voiceover tying it together, and a lot of it has to do with the visual style that we talked about, making that be more palatable.
Right. Oh, then we learn that Keith's taking on a Kane case, which is strange.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing, I'm sorry to interrupt,
go ahead,
but
please.
The other thing that we get in all these flashbacks is about how her mom left. That during this case, Lily Kane, who got murdered, and her dad is going after her boyfriend's family and this really rich guy who started a streaming video company, that during this time he became obsessed with the case and the mom left. And that's kind of all we know at this point. We briefly meet the dog. I'm obsessed with the dog.
It's such a good joke. Bring back
I know
up.
It's such a good joke.
That's
it
really good.
is. It is. It's a really solid joke. But right before she goes back to the office, she does see Wallace at the beach, and there's like this. They just kind of vibe with each other without really trying. Like they seem to be pretty fast friends. But then she goes back to the office. It is another
case though where Veronica Mars has chemistry with everybody. So
sure, but yeah, there's something about like Wallace's like sweetness, but also appreciation for what she is that like kind of sets them off on a good foot.
Yeah, I really like their dynamic.
Yeah. And then she goes back to her dad's office and sees Duncan's mom's car outside.
And you can tell she's a rich lady because she's wearing a little neck scarf. She's got like a little silk scarf.
Well, also I think she's driving a very fancy car. But
yeah, also that.
Yeah. Well, there's the strip club case. So there's the guy that shows up while her dad is meeting with Celeste. And he kind of implicitly acknowledges that like she's also doing this work, and is like, if your dad has time, you know.
It is funny that the town kind of knows that Veronica's a little junior detective, barely junior. She's really, and even Keith pretends like he thinks he knows.
Yeah,
like, totally. He even says a little later, like, I thought I told you to stay away from that case. And she's like, I remember you telling me to bring backup. Like, he knows.
Yeah, everybody knows. But it's a case about a strip club that serves minors. It's like a little D plot in the episode. We find out that Keith is going to be going to deal with some other case. I think this is where we see him take off.
There is a little bit. I love Keith and Veronica, but there is a little bit of the mom left. So now Veronica is sort of stepping in. Like she talks about getting the car for him, and they have a little back and forth.
She brings food later on. Yeah.
She's really kind of taking care of him. But he's not, she's really kind of taking care of him, but he is also a present and what's the word I want? This is such a, well, actually, now I'm working on something here. There is a dad in Harriet the Spy, not Harriet's dad, Sport's dad, who he's a writer and is useless, and his kid has to take care of him. And so I was just thinking of like how Keith could have become that kind of dad, where the wife leaves, his case gets ruined, he falls out of everybody's good graces, and instead of still working, Veronica has to pick up the slack, and she becomes the detective because the dad can't support the family anymore. But that's not at all what's going on here. And
we've seen variations of that many times.
Exactly.
The dad who is just, I feel like we saw it not that long ago.
That's what I was trying to think of when I got stuck because I didn't want to say Harriet the Spy because I thought we had one.
We definitely did. There was another one where I was like, the dad is not being a good parent. Yeah. It'll come back to me. But no, he's definitely still a parent. He kind of has this acceptance that like his life won't function properly unless he lets Veronica be the sort of pseudo adult that she wants to be.
Right, exactly.
But it's so funny because like you kind of expect him to be incompetent because he's such a goofball.
Yeah.
Like, he loves a dad joke, you know, like he's a very silly man, but he, you know, also is clearly not an idiot about his work.
No, perfect dad.
We love a dad with a spunky daughter.
Mm-hmm. She jokes about getting a Crown Vic, which is very funny because it's a top car.
Yes. Trust me.
Trust me.
Oh, right. Your dad was a cop. 35 years. I know. I still have an instinctive like reaction to seeing a Crown Vic on the road just from growing up in Jersey with the aggressive cops there. Yeah. So Veronica goes on a stakeout. She watches Duncan's dad? Yes.
Yeah.
He's at a hotel called the Camelot.
So she goes on the stakeout. We get some more flashbacks then, because I think the idea is she's thinking back while she's watching, because it's Jake Kane. That's when you learn that the crime scene video has been leaked. You also Keith has been going after the Kane family, and that's when we get the reveal that as far as we know, he was wrong because somebody confesses, an employee of their company who has a perfect name, Abel Kuntz. It's Cotton Weary from Scream. It's like the same kind of name to me.
I can see that. Yeah, it's a great name. It really is. And then Veronica goes to like make a deal with Weevil,
which was every time I watch this, I'm like, because she says like leave him alone for a week.
Yeah,
and every time I watch this, I'm like, yeah, but at the end of the week he can kill him. But it's because she's got some plans in the works. She's always a few steps ahead of everyone.
She's that meme of like all of the math on the blackboard. She sees it all in her head. She's got 12 steps ahead of everyone else.
She's so good.
Like, this is another case of if it wasn't for the charm of Kristen Bell, I don't know that this would work, because she has to be so far ahead of everyone. Like,
but she memorized Pope, so we know that she is.
She is, she's 12 steps ahead of everyone. She's got like a plan that involves planting evidence in a police station. Like,
she's so funny.
Knowing that she's owed favors or the guy at the fire department like still has respect for her dad and will do her a favor. Like, there's so many working pieces to this that all have to work, and she's just like fully confident that everything is going to go through.
She just needs a few days and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
She's the best.
She impersonates a duty officer.
It's so funny. Well, she impersonates first the Inga. Person at the Inga at the desk.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because her Veronica's accent, I'm like, oh boy, but then you meet Inga and it's like pretty good.
Yeah, totally. It's not bad at all. But then we get the party scene.
I know.
Which is like, this is what I mean about the tone. Like, I don't know how this like works, but going back and forth between her putting on this ridiculous accent to literally being roofied at a party and being raped and like waking up and actually in that pilot script that I was talking about, I don't know how far you got, but the original scene is actually worse.
Oh.
Like, this is what I think they meant when they said like UPN made it a little bit less dark. Like, not just like little details, but stuff that like is plot related too. So it was really interesting to read it. Also a little confusing for someone who didn't watch the rest of the show. But
I wonder if any of it is stuff that gets teased out in later episodes or if it's stuff that they just fully cut. That is interesting. I am going to have to go back and read more through that.
Yeah.
On the heels of our conversation about how Dawson's Creek handles teenagers and sex, where Pacey, whether the show thinks so or not, like, was definitionally raped by an older woman. I know that it is different from getting roofied and raped at a party.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously. But that and we know you know more about Jen's background at this point. That I'm conflicted with how I think they handle it with Veronica, because on the one hand, I think they do a pretty good job of making it doesn't feel super sensationalized. It feels like something that sort of makes sense for the plot. But I also kind of struggle with the fact that, like, Veronica's life was great and she was hanging out with these, you know, upper class people, and then she was raped and it made her tough and it made her have this sense of justice. And like it makes her this sort of insistent force.
Well, it's also the instigating incident with that cop where he basically makes fun of her.
Yeah, he's really terrible.
Horrible. Yeah. I didn't necessarily read it that way. Like, I see what you're saying, but I felt like it was also that she was kind of toughened not just by that specific moment, but by the rejection of her peers.
Oh, and, of course.
Like, fully, not just from the rape.
It's hard to say if it's the rape, the murder of her best friend,
right,
the abandonment of her mother,
her boyfriend randomly leaving her
boyfriend randomly breaking up with her. It's really hard to say what toughens her. Sure. Yeah, you're right about that. God, they really put her through it.
Yeah, they do. And that's the thing. Like, if you want to think about it in relationship to other shows we've watched, like with Dawson's Creek, the fact that, like, of sexual assault and of sex in that show, even though it's treated in sort of like a teen soap way, it's definitely dealt with a little more emotion. That's what it is. I think that she's so smart and hardened and quippy and whatever that there's not, like, she does cry when she wakes up, but it feels very perfunctory. Like, there's so much more about her toughness than it is about, like, any real...
Right. She cries so that we can see how different she is after.
Yeah. Yeah, it's treated more... Like, it's not like we aren't to think that rape is bad or anything, but it's just very, like, it's a plot point more than it is, like, something that we dwell in.
Which, like, is also... I don't know. I would like to find somebody who's written about how the rape is handled in the show.
Would you like to find an academic article on JSTOR about the depiction of sexual assault in teen television from the mid 90s to mid 2000s?
I think I might want to read that article. Yeah. Veronica gets these pictures of Jake. She can see that there's a woman. She can't see who it is.
Okay, this is where I need to break in. So
enhance.
Yeah. Exactly. As a photographer, the fact that... So this is one of the other things that's really funny to me about reading the pilot script, because in the show, she shoots film because obviously it's 2004. Like, I got my first digital camera in, like, 2006, and they were around, but...
And it's cooler.
Yeah. Also. And nobody but photographers will care about this, but I don't care. I have to say this. She's, like, scanning her film and immediately being able to print it out reasonably well on a printer. I'm a little skeptical. In the original script, there are darkroom scenes. She's printing the photos in the darkroom. I want that so badly. That would have been so much better. I know that that's the bubble. This is the moment when we start to get the switch over from digital to film, or excuse me, from film to digital. But the way it's described in the script when she's in the darkroom, I'm just, like, sad that we didn't get that.
So the idea in the show is that the darkroom happened off camera. She's got the prints that she's developed.
But it's color. So she must have developed the film and then scanned it somehow. Scanners weren't good then. I don't know how she scanned it. I don't know how she is doing this. That's, I think, what's bothering me. Anyway, that's really not the point. But so I just have to read this real quick, because in this original script, and this is just the photo nerd in me wants this, after she goes to meet the kid in the ceramics studio to plan the planting of the bong, it says, interior, tiny dark room, day. Series of shots that show Veronica expertly processing a roll of film, Veronica choosing a negative to print, Veronica printing from the negative, Veronica moving an 8x10 print from tray to tray. In the final tray, the image becomes clear. It's a close-up of the woman exiting the Camelot with Jake Kane. Again, we don't actually see her in the version that we watched. Veronica dries 2 prints with a blow dryer. The prints appear to be identical. Veronica studies them, chooses one, crumples the other, throws it in a trash can. Veronica steps out into her bedroom, and we realize that she is possibly the only teenage girl in the world who has replaced her walk-in closet with a darkroom.
That's very good.
As somebody who since the age of 13 wanted a darkroom in a closet in their house, I'm sad that I didn't get to see that on screen. But
not everybody has Keith Mars as a dad who would let them do that. So
yes. Okay, we can move on. I had to get that off my chest.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, it's very important to me.
I understand. Logan is the world's worst person.
Oh my God. He's awful. I don't want to spoil anything. Does he
suck forever?
I feel like he doesn't stay just a villain, because I remember just random episodes from later seasons where they're like talking to each other like they don't hate each other with a burning passion. So anyway, you don't have to tell me the answer to that question, but I feel like this is like we're setting him up as an asshole and we're going to find out there's more to it.
Maybe.
I'm going to have to watch, I guess. Once I get through Dawson's Creek.
Exactly. You got to finish the creek first.
I can't believe... I won't say it in case people haven't watched.
We find out Wallace and Veronica are scheming. We don't totally know what.
This is what I mean. This is a very, very complicated scheme.
Yeah. Veronica's
so
got
many
a
moving
friend
parts.
of hers making something. We don't know what yet.
Yeah. Also, I know that this doesn't matter because it never got done on film, but the bong that is being made, that we find out that the ceramics kid is making in the script was a penis bong.
Very funny. Double funny.
Yeah. They refer to it as a cock bong the whole time.
Very
Which is very Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
What else? We get a license plate. So that's good.
Yes. And of course, Veronica is going to find out that license plate.
Of course she is. What do you mean?
Yeah.
It's easy peasy for her.
Yeah, she's very competent. She's hyper competent.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then we get our first real, I mean, there's a lot of tension, but our first, for me, real moment of tension is when Keith comes back and he's so happy because he got paid, right? Mm-hmm. That's the scene?
I think so. Later? $2,500.
Yeah. When he's doing a little dance and being silly and he jokes about how he used to be cool. And he references Springsteen.
Yes.
And I love him so much.
Yes.
But
yeah, he looks at the photograph and we see kind of his expression change. And it's this like pretty obvious moment of like, there's something he's not telling her. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the little rift between the two of them where there's been this sort of buddy cop thing happening and this honesty. And then we get a little bit of a division.
Right. Which is hard to see because you can tell that they have a pretty harmonious relationship. Mm-hmm. And they're two people who have been through.
Yeah.
I mean.
Totally.
Kind of the worst of the worst, right? So.
Yeah. But then she goes into her full-on plan in the midst of this. It's so ridiculous. And like.
It is a little hard to, and again, I've seen this episode so many times. It's a little hard to trace. So
It is.
First thing is
she's recording outside the strip club.
Right. So that's the first thing.
Mm-hmm. And then we've got the locker.
She plants the bong in Logan's locker.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then they're outside the sheriff's office, her and Wallace in the car.
Uh-huh.
And he's using the remote control for his plane to activate the bong somehow to start spewing smoke. The fire department is called. I'm literally reading it and it's still hard to follow. Inga is yelling about the fire.
Mm-hmm.
Veronica then goes to the fire station and we find out that
we had to get the fire department into the police department.
Exactly. To steal evidence.
Illegal. Jodie.
To steal evidence.
You can't.
From the police.
Really compromising every case. Which seems right now like a bad thing, but is right. Like you'd be like, oh, well, okay. Now, Veronica, nobody's got a case if you tamper with evidence, but that's actually part of it.
Yeah, exactly. So the fireman steals the evidence using the bonfire as an excuse. She then goes to the fire station to get a handoff of the envelope, which has the tape in it, which is the recording of the robbing of the sack and pack.
Right.
Which then I guess swaps out. The fireman swaps out the original tape with a tape she hands him. We never see this.
Right.
Of a cop consorting with, we are to assume, a prostitute or a minor outside the strip club.
Right.
Which she has taken earlier.
Right. Who is also, it seems, has some sort of case against her because the lawyer says, is this the time to ask to throw out the case of, and that's that stripper is my guess.
Oh, yeah,
right?
probably. I guess. I have no fucking idea. It got real confusing around here, and I was just kind of along for the ride.
I'm pretty sure that's what's happening.
Yeah. But this is when she makes the call, and we hear her Inga impersonation to get the license plate, and we find out that the license plate is traced to her mom.
Mm-hmm. Which, of course, it is.
Yep. Her mother has something to do with Jake Kane.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so swaps the tape, and then that gets Weevil's case dismissed. Mm-hmm. It also puts Wallace at an advantage because now he has the actual evidence, though I don't think it's admissible. You can read. I really don't know. But fine, whatever.
But it's enough to convince, the gang of miscreants that...
She's so good because it gets them off Wallace's back, but it gets them on her side.
Yeah, she now has a gang, gang backing her up. Yeah,
against somebody like Logan.
Yeah. It's so contrived, and I kind of can't believe it works. But
it's great. It's real. It is weirdly satisfying to see it all come together. Almost because it's so ridiculous. Because it's ridiculous, but in a way that it's like, well, you can't argue with it.
Well, it's like wish fulfillment. Like the bad guys get what's coming to them. The girl wins, even though she's been hurt, and it is like when you read it on paper, you're like, oh, okay, But then you see it, and you've got your charming protagonist and her charming father, and you're like, all right, I'll go along with this.
I think it's really nice. I just think it's nice.
Yeah. What else do we see at the end? So Veronica breaks into Keith's safe and finds the file on the Lily Kane murder and realizes that he hasn't let it go after all. Oh, and then of course there's the beach scene where she's there with Wallace, and then isn't it she's there with Wallace and then Logan? Yeah, Logan and his idiot friends are like lounging on her car. They're mad because he got in trouble for the bong being in his locker, lost his car. His parents took away his, what is it? T-Bird is the song lyric. His daddy took his T-Bird away.
And of course, he knows. I mean, it could have been anybody. Anybody could have done that, though.
Clearly, it was her. But he starts literally smashing her headlights with a golf club. This is, again, it's this weird tone that goes back and forth between, like, nothing bad is going to happen and everything bad is going to happen all at once. It's like, everything's going to be fine, but, like, nothing is going to be fine.
And this show doesn't let up on that. Like, there's a lot. If you keep watching, you'll see it. It really is pretty... I don't know what the word is, but it's kind of crazy.
But then Weevil and his buddies show up to protect their new friend who has saved them from getting in trouble for something that, I don't know. Again, I'm not going to nitpick, but like they're now her protecting crew.
It doesn't make sense because she wasn't doing it for their benefit, but she somehow knew this was going to work out for everybody. So.
Of course she did. But then they show up to defend her, and really, like, they take a crowbar to a car that apparently belongs to the parents of one of Logan's friends. It's not even their car.
Yeah.
And then he starts beating the shit out of Logan, and it's just like trying to make him apologize. He won't.
He's
Veronica
got it coming.
Yeah. He's clearly a full-on asshole, at least now. But I mean, I would argue so is a lot of people in the show so far.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think that's the show.
Well, there's one more scene at the end where she is driving around. She sees... this is when she gets into the safe. This is actually after. I'm sorry.
God,
I flopped them. After this is when she waits for her dad to leave the office, gets into the safe, finds the file. And then when Keith comes back, he says that he's ordered food and rented South Park.
It's her favorite movie.
Her favorite, yeah. And then she says she just has to make a quick stop. And this is when she goes back to the motel. And we see her knock on the door. And then we cut to black. And so it's like, it leaves on a bit of a cliffhanger.
I do love that she says something sweet about like, yeah, he lied to me, but you know,
right.
That feels pretty realistic to me, that this isn't a whole show about this girl being like, she still lives with her dad. She can't actually cut him off, and she does care about him, and she's pretty reasonable. Like, she also hasn't told him everything. And
yeah, that to me,
like that.
There's something about the fact that she is like a parentified child, where she's like, she can see as sort of a pseudo adult that like he's lying to her, but he's probably doing it to protect her, instead of the like typical teenager reaction, which would be like, just, my dad's lying to me, I hate him forever, you know. Right. It's because she is like older than her years, blah blah blah, that she's seeing him more as a human and not just her dad.
Exactly.
So yeah, we leave it off with the knocking on the door of the creepy hotel. And I mean, I will say I was tempted to start up another episode. I kind of did, and then I was like, I don't have the energy for this right now.
Yeah, you gotta pay attention. This isn't the creek where you just kind of throw it on and see.
Exactly. I did actually turn this off and throw on a couple of episodes of Dawson's Creek and texted you repeatedly about it, and you did not respond to me.
I think it was past my bedtime at that point.
Oh yeah. It was definitely later. I stayed up watching television way too late last night.
Yeah. I was up very early yesterday, so I went to bed pretty early.
Yeah.
And then I was up again early this morning, so
I could definitely see coming back to this as another sort of like studio or like while I'm doing something else show, even though it does require more attention. I think it's still, there's something about the teen shows from this time period that feel very almost like weirdly innocent, even though they're not like sweet in a way. And so I think that even though it deals with some serious shit, it's kind of a good vibes show in a weird way.
I think so.
Like, I have faith that Veronica's going to be fine. She's going to solve things. She's going to figure shit out. She's going to, outsmart people. And
it is really smart to have a show that has this big, like, season-long mystery that is very confusing and does get frustrated at every turn and blah, blah, blah. But to know every week that there will be some resolution.
Yeah, I mean, it's why people watch shows like Law and Order and things like that. It's like, it's nice to have a conclusion where the bad guy usually gets it at the end of the episode, and you can kind of feel satisfied by that.
Yeah. I do like Veronica Mars is pretty good at not always... The ending is not always satisfying in the way you want. Like, you always get some sort of resolution, but it's not the kind of thing where you're watching and you're like, well, Veronica always figures it out and everything's always fine. So they are really good at that.
I also am glad to know I tried not to get too spoiled, but I ended up getting a little spoiled just finding out that the big mystery of the murder is resolved at the end of this season. It's not something they drag on forever.
Did you find out what the resolution is? We'll cut it.
Kind of, but I think I guessed.
I will say this show is much more complicated than you can imagine. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. That's fine.
But also that each season has its own long-running mystery. Yeah.
Which is a nice way to set it up. It's a nice way to keep you moving from episode to episode, but also make you feel like you can stop after an episode, feel like you've got a button to kind of, finish at and then start the next one.
Yeah, I think it's pretty smart. That
one.
Also has a great theme song. Did we get the theme song in this first episode? Or is it another instance?
I don't think we do in this episode, because I remember reading about it and being, I don't think I heard that. What is the theme song?
Dandy Warhols, We Used to Be Friends.
Yes. I don't think we get it for the pilot.
We do get a great use of Don't Fear the Reaper, which is in so many movies and TV shows.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I mean, it's because it's a great song, I guess, but it must also just not be as expensive as it should be because it's in Halloween, Scream, this show. I was looking at the list. It's in so much stuff, but those are the three big ones for me.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed myself. I definitely, the tone was different than I remembered because the episodes that I've watched randomly here and there were more, I think because I didn't know what else was going on, were more mystery of the week, lighthearted. Like I didn't expect there to be like a murder and a rape in the first episode.
Oh no? Huh.
I think the murder actually surprised me less than like the nonchalance with which the rape was treated. But yeah, I could see myself going back to it. I think one of the things that would be interesting to think about when we finish this run of pilots, whenever that is like which ones we watched and then kept watching, which ones we watched and then got through a couple more episodes and fell off, which ones we like, because certain things like, Station 11, we did the pilot and then even though I'd already seen it, I went back and rewatched it. You watched the whole thing, Severance, same thing, right? I rewatched it again after watching the pilot. You watched the whole thing. Certain shows that mean a ton to me, like My So-Called Life, I only got through the first 3 episodes and had to stop because it's just too it brings me back to that moment in my life too much.
Right. Yeah.
And then like Dawson's Creek, I watched the pilot and now I'm at the end of season 2 and like...
And it's my favorite, but it's certainly not the best thing we've watched.
No,
so
no, it's not. But
the idea that that's the thing that grabbed you is really interesting.
Well, and I think for me, typically what this means is like the tone is right for where I'm at in that moment.
Right. Totally.
And like it has to be something that, not to be too whatever about it, but like if I'm having a lot of stress in my daily life, it has to be something that's so removed from that that doesn't bring up anything that I'm currently dealing with.
You watched all of Fallout as well, right?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And that makes sense. I rewatched all of Silo when we did that.
I did not.
And The Leftovers, I ended up watching the whole thing.
That's right. I did not.
So yeah, I seem to have more time on my hands right now than you do.
I think we just spend it differently.
No, I think you're working full time and I am on my summer break.
It is the summer. Okay, yeah, fair.
And,
fair.
And I'm in my studio working all the time, but that's...
Well, you also have work you can do. I can't watch TV and edit podcasts at the same time as much as I would love to.
Yeah, no, totally.
My biggest complaint about my job is that I can't consume media to the degree that I would like.
Yeah. No, that's funny, but it's true. Like if we were doing this during the school year, I do not think I would have gone through and like watched so much of these things.
Right. That makes sense.
But yeah, I think I'll come back to this when I have some time and I need another studio TV show.
It is
I like the fact that the idea that photography is her hobby and also her way of like, solving some of these crimes. That I'll enjoy that.
It's funny for her to say like a girl's got to have her hobbies. I'm a photographer, but then the photography she does is just like, she's not like an artistic photographer.
No,
she's just like
she's just stalking people in hotel rooms.
Yeah, she says it, and then they show a bunch of like grainy pictures of people in hotel rooms. It's very funny.
Well, one of the things in the script that didn't end up in the final has to do with that. Like we get a reveal in her bedroom after she comes out of the quote unquote closet dark room, where we see her bedroom right after she comes out of her dark room. And it's like, she has a bunch of cheaply framed, I'm trying to find the actual quote, but she has a bunch of cheaply framed pictures on her wall of like couples coming out of hotel rooms, like adultery, just like is it up all over her bedroom.
Right, that's her hobby.
Yeah,
collecting and framing pictures of adulterous. Yeah, I love that.
It's really funny.
She's the best. Yeah, so that's Veronica Mars. Should we tell them what we're watching next week?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you think about what we've been doing and the shows we've been watching and the context and the time period and the fact that we were watching Gen X shows and now we're watching, millennial Andrea's generation shows of a certain kind, I think you can probably guess where we're going next.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. It seems, and I think we've maybe said we're going to cover this one outright.
I think we have.
I will say it is a show that is sort of, the pilot is tough. Not in like a problematic way. It's just, this is a show that starts out pretty low budget. Mm-hmm. It is much sillier than it becomes. Mm-hmm. Should also say it's created by a real shithead. Mm. So it's one of those shows that we don't have to look past it. We can talk about it.
Yeah.
But it's just something to keep in mind. We know.
Yeah.
But it's a show that I love.
I'm excited. So I have a very similar relation to this that I do to the other two that we watched that were quote unquote your shows. Mm-hmm. They came out later than the time period when I was interested in a teen show. Mm-hmm. So I have a peripheral, I can say that word. I have a peripheral relationship to this show in the same way I did to Dawson's Creek and to Veronica Mars, in that it's actually, a lot of this has to do with grad school, because when I was in grad school, I was in my mid-30s and I was there with people older than me, but also a lot of people that were about a decade younger than me. Mm-hmm. And so those people became my friends, regardless of the age gap. And this was a significant show for most of those people. And so I have like peripheral pop cultural knowledge of it, but I can't tell you if I've ever watched an episode, to be completely honest.
Very fun. Very fun.
It's very Dawson's Creek in that way. Like I know what it's about generally. Mm-hmm. It's referenced in fucking everything. Mm-hmm. So like I know it through that, but I don't think I've maybe ever watched a full episode. It's
a great show that means so much to me, and you will not necessarily understand why by watching the pilot, but I do think you have to watch it. It's also older than Dawson's Creek by a full year and Veronica Mars by almost a decade. But this is just the order it felt like it made sense to present them.
It's all the same general, like, to me, I'm thinking about this in like blocks of our lives. Mm-hmm. So like Beverly Hills 90210, My So-Called Life, and Freaks and Geeks were all kind of in that time period where I was the prime target. Mm-hmm. And these are, regardless of order, you were the prime target.
Right. That's right. And I'm excited to talk about it. We still haven't said what it is, but it's obviously Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
It's obviously Buffy, yeah. And I mean, I have always felt like maybe this show wasn't for me, but so many people in my life whose taste I respect, this was one of their shows. Mm-hmm. And so I'm excited. I know that the pilot's not the best, but I'm still excited to see it and just kind of...
It's just so much... I mean, the show is silly forever, but it's also deathly serious sometimes, and it just becomes so much more. I think you'll have fun. You'll have fun.
Well, any of these shows that goes on for a long period of time, we've talked about how, either they like jump the shark and go completely crazy like 90210, mm-hmm. or they get much deeper and better, or they kind of peter out. Like, none of these shows that lasted more than a couple of seasons stay exactly what they started as. Right. And I think that that's to be expected. I mean, those magical one-season shows that everybody pines for, part of the reason they're magical is because they were one season.
Exactly.
And they didn't get a chance to evolve. So like,
totally.
We're going to look at it with that perspective.
Hey, Andrea here. Apologies for the audio quality. I am just jumping in because I forgot to mention that we are covering the first 2 episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's a to be continued part 1, part 2. So for next week, you'll want to watch Welcome to the Hellmouth and The Harvest. It's like an hour and 20-ish minutes all told. And it's great. You're going to have a great time. I promise. I feel like I undersold it when I was talking to Jodie, but it's the best. You're going to have so much fun.
I also think maybe we can give people a heads up for what's after that, just briefly, the week after. So for those people that aren't also in the New Jersey is the world milieu, we had an adventure last weekend where I drove down to Jersey and we went to Vulgarthon, which is the Kevin Smith movie marathon This year it took place at Smodcastle Cinemas in our
Atlantic Highlands.
Thank you, in Atlantic Highlands. So Andrea and I met up there.
Which is Kevin Smith's theater that he owns.
Yes. And so we met up there and watched a good chunk of the Askew-niverse movies, starting with Clerks. And so we have a little recap of that coming the week after Buffy, just as sort of a break in between pilot episodes, just so that it's not too far off in the distance from when we actually did it. Yeah. But we already recorded that. That'll come out after the Buffy episode.
And if you want, in the meantime, so we recorded, the conversation we have is really based on the movies themselves. And I think I mentioned this in that recording, but I guess this will be 2 weeks ago or last week over on New Jersey is the World, over on the Patreon. We talked more about the event itself. Although it did end up, if you were interested in the conversation we had about Chasing Amy when we covered that one, the conversation it's about the event itself over on New Jersey is the World, but it somehow
we ended up in the same
So a lot more talk about queerness in the Kevin Smith universe. Because we can't help ourselves, even if we're talking to
Chris Gethard.
So. It was very fun though. So
there was a little bit more there just about though, like the process. And one of the people that went to that we didn't really know, but got a ticket from Chris, had only ever seen like half of Clerks and all of Dogma, and went to and attempted to go to a Kevin Smith movie marathon. It's an interesting.
That part of the conversation was
so funny to me.
Just the funniest. I don't remember the last time I was that delighted by something.
Just imagine watching like the full movie of Clerks for the first time in 2024. Wild.
In a movie, everything about it is so funny to me.
It's so good.
So if you're a Kevin Smith fan, you've got a bunch of Kevin Smith content.
Yeah.
Like I said, episode over on New Jersey is the World, and then our episode coming up next week. And then we'll be back
next week after Buffy.
Right. In 2 weeks. But we've got some more plans, obviously. And while we're tying up little loose ends here, if you're not busy watching every episode of Dawson's Creek, I just want to recommend a documentary. It is it's called Space, Hope, and Charity. Jodie, I know you're familiar with it. Charity Woodrum was an early beautiful anonymous caller. She's obviously not anonymous anymore,
right?
But she has a story, and I don't even want to spoil it, but it's so I'm just going to give you the blurb from where you can watch it on Eventive, which is an award-winning documentary about a young woman from rural Oregon who overcomes poverty and tragedy while chasing her dream of becoming a NASA astrophysicist. After losing her husband and young son, Charity Woodrum finds solace in far-off galaxies with help from childhood friends and perfect strangers. Her deeply personal story highlights resilience, grief, mentorship, and the power of human connection. It's intense. I would say if you're where Jodie is right now, where all you can really handle is Dawson's Creek.
That's why I haven't watched it yet, actually, to be completely honest. It's on my list.
Sure. I don't know that this is a documentary for you, but if you're somebody if you
need a good cry.
It's perfect for if you need a good cry. It's really beautiful. It's tough. Charity's story is tough, but she is just brilliant and incredible and lovely, and the people in this documentary are all of those things too. I can't recommend it enough. It's $12.99. I'll link to it in the show notes. It's called Space, Hope, and Charity, which is an incredibly, I love that title so much.
It's a great title.
Isn't it really good?
Yeah, it's really good.
You can also watch the trailer. I'll link to the trailer. You can also listen, her first episode, she's been back on the show a couple of times, but her first episode is Whirlpool Galaxy. It's from a few years ago, and it is I think the first time she tells her story, and it's only like a year or so after what she calls the worst day when she lost her husband and her son. But what I was struck by in the documentary is how much more of her story there is. Like, she's fascinating, and a lovely person. And you can watch the documentary, and then for free, you can watch the conversation that Gethard had with her and the filmmakers. That's floating around on the internet for free now. For folks if they want to watch that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's one of those episodes of Beautiful Anonymous that just has such an afterlife. Like, I mean, I enjoy every episode of that show that I listen to, but there's definitely some that have had a longer tail than others, and that's one of them.
And she's been back on the show. Like I said, she did, I think, 2 follow-up calls, plus she was a guest at our at the convention, and again, is obviously there are a handful of our callers who are no longer anonymous.
Yeah.
I think kind of because the community just embraced her so wholeheartedly that she felt comfortable, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of coming out from behind the
paywall is not right.
No,
but yeah.
Out from behind the phone. I don't know what
the curtain, the phone booth.
Yeah, something like that.
She came out of the phone booth.
Yeah.
Like Superman.
Exactly like that. Yeah. But yeah, I'll link to the trailer and where you can watch it. I've already gifted it to a couple of people. You can also share it if you watch it and like it, which I think is nice that they have that option.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that's just my little recommendation for the week. I said that for the week as if every week we have a little recommendation.
We do sometimes.
Last week you recommended Alone.
I did, and the podcast specifically.
Yeah. And this week I'm recommending Space Open Charity.
Yeah. I like the end of podcast recommendations that people give. I think I wanted to do that more regularly, and we just never really have. But every now and then, there's something. So
that's it.
Yeah.
Last thing we have to do before we say goodbye. Last week we talked about Jersey diners, and you asked me what my go-to order was.
Oh, yes.
I said that we would talk about this entirely this week after our listeners have had a chance to weigh in. So I hope that they will have.
I forgot about it. So
full disclosure, we're recording this episode the same morning that last week's episode released, so you won't have time to have told us what your go-to order is yet.
Yeah.
But we're gonna let you know what ours is, and we'll check next week.
And maybe what diner we would order this at, ideally.
Yes. So do you want to go first?
Sure, I guess so. Okay. My go-to order is very basic. I think is evidenced by makes sense if you know how much time I actually spent in diners. My go-to order would be, I would say at Suburban Diner, pre-renovation in an ideal world, or Twin Oaks when that existed, or Matthews, but no, probably not Matthews. Let's say Suburban Diner pre-renovation. It would be 2 eggs over easy, white toast dry, coffee, jelly on the side, and a glass of orange juice.
That's perfect. Can I have
every time?
2? I have 2.
Yeah, maybe a side of bacon if I was eating meat at the time.
Oh, fancy.
Yeah.
My diner always there were other diners I would frequent when we'd spent too much time at one diner in a night and we'd have to move to a different location. But in general, every night started at Starview Diner, which just closed down this year, and I am just devastated. But if it was late night, it was a grilled cheddar on rye, curly fries, side of honey mustard.
No honey mustard. But other than that, that sounds great.
That's the best.
Yeah.
And then
a little bit more highbrow than my eggs and toast.
You think so?
I do.
Grilled cheese?
Yeah. Just a step up. Well, the curly fries.
Okay.
Is what does
I can
it.
See that. Yeah.
A little fancy.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
And then morning order, 2 eggs over easy, dry rye, home fries well done, and then either side of sliced tomatoes or side of cream cheese, side of jelly. Just depends.
Interesting.
Coffee, always coffee.
Yeah, I was always a butter and jelly. Although I always say dry because they will drown that shit in butter.
Yeah, dry rye.
You got to put it on separate. I was a white toast girl. Yeah.
Yeah, rye's my jam.
How's the coffee being drank?
Hot black.
What are you putting in it?
Nothing.
So you're a Jen.
I'm a black coffee.
You're a Jen.
That's how you know I'm fancy from New York.
You're a hardened New York girl. Yeah.
I've always been a black coffee drinker. I don't know.
Yeah, that's weird.
I don't know why. Sometimes in an iced, I'll take a little splash of oat milk or something. But I've been drinking. I also started drinking coffee too young, like Jen Lindley. But I've always been a black coffee drinker.
Me too. But I think my experience is more typical, which is I started drinking it too young and had to put a bunch of cream and sugar in it to make it palatable, and I just still drink it that way.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't think there's any reason to judge anybody for how they take their coffee. How you take it is how you take it.
diner coffee is to me perfect with 2 little creamers and 2 sugars.
That does sound nice.
And endless refills.
Yeah.
By a waitress that calls you hun.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's the best.
I need to go to a diner right now.
I know. I mean, Rhode Island has some good diners. They're just different. It is diner culture here too. It's just a slightly different version. It's not as much the Greek diner, the giant menu, because the Paramus diner is a very specific thing with that like endless, huge, gigantic menu where you can order like a lobster or you can order like toast and coffee.
I was also thinking the other day about how, and I wouldn't do this now at my age, but when I was a younger person going to Starview where they all literally knew me by name, and I wasn't eating meat, and it was before we had good vegetarian options, I would just make up random shit. Like I remember one time ordering a French bread pizza basically, but that wasn't something they had on the menu. So just being like, can I get a hard roll with marinara and mozzarella? And like,
oh yeah, they do it.
They would do it. As long as they have the ingredients, they'll bring you whatever you want. There was
also a period where like money
now though,
where money was super tight.
Also that. Where
I couldn't quite afford the eggs and toast, so I would just get coffee and cinnamon toast. This was the thing I was super into at the time. Oh my God, I've ordered and eaten a lot of cinnamon toast and coffee at a diner, and in my head, it wasn't the money, it was the comfort of cinnamon toast is a real comfort food for me. And I think maybe it was also the money. I'm actually not sure, but it was like $1 or $2 cheaper than the eggs and toast. And sometimes that mattered. I needed that $1 or $2 for gas. Yeah, right. You needed $1.15 cash. Or like $2 for a pack of cigarettes.
God.
Yeah.
The good old days, huh?
The good old days.
I'm going to go to a diner like now.
I am not, but I wish I was. I'm going to go to a vegan coffee shop because times have changed for me.
What a world.
What a world.
All right.
Yeah. Where can they find us?
WatchersPodNJ at Gmail. WatchersPodNJ on Instagram.
Yep. They can find me on Instagram at Jodie_Mim, JODIE_MIM. I think I have a cat now, maybe.
I think you have a cat now, Jodie.
Yeah.
And I'm at AQAndreaQ.
We will see you. Where are we going to see them next week?
Sunnydale.
We'll see you in Sunnydale.
On the Hellmouth.
Okay. Sure. If you say so.
I do say so.
I'll still be probably at the creek for a while longer, but
I love it. I thought you wouldn't last a day on the creek, and now you know that reference too. Well, now that reference is a reference you understand.
Yes.
Because it's from Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
Yes.
I'm sure you could have. I'm sure you weren't struggling to figure out that reference.
No, I wasn't, actually.
But now it's one that means something to you, rather.
Yeah. Okay. I think maybe at some point if I make it all the way through Dawson's Creek, we should do like a wrap-up episode.
Oh my God, I would love that. Nothing would make me happier.
I have a friend who texted me this morning that she was listening to the Dawson's Creek episode and has many thoughts and asked if we were going to do any more Dawson's Creek. So I was like, well, maybe we'll do a wrap-up.
That was the first podcast I ever wanted to start, was the Dawson's Creek rewatch pod. So.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.